Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick at soulproof.com, answering commonly asked questions about life, death, and afterlife. And this one is about death and afterlife. Is there really life after death? And will I see my departed loved ones again? This is one of the most commonly asked questions I get from around the world. And so the short answers are yes and yes. There is an afterlife, and yes, you will see loved ones again. I was motivated to address this work after working in hospitals as a young man at age 20, being around hundreds of people as they died, working in intensive care units and emergency rooms. My very first case, after I completed all my training, I ran down to the emergency room. I was ready to help save lives, doing code 4s, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Was a little 5-year-old boy, a cute little blonde-haired guy, who was walking on his way to school, his first day of kindergarten, and a truck ran a light and ran him over. Unbelievable. We worked on that little guy for 4 hours, and despite everything we did, he passed on. It was so moving. It was the only time in my career that I've seen doctors and nurses cry openly and hug one another. And I staggered out of the ER just in time to see the head doctor tell the little boy's parents that their only child had died. Well, I went outside in a grassy area and literally shook my fist to the sky and said, God, you SOB. First of all, I don't even know you exist anymore. But if you do, what kind of God are you where little children die like this? I always heard that God was all present, all powerful, all knowing. And if so, why didn't he or she stop something like this? Well, that created a time of agnosticism or atheism for me. But it also spurred me to find out for myself. I wanted to find out what were the answers. Let's cut out the BS. I don't want to hear any fairy tales. What are the facts? If there is nothing after this life, if this life is just chaotic and random, so be it. But I wanted to know the facts. And I searched literally for 30 years, every bit of information I could. I went to theology school. I became a clinical psychologist. So I read widely. I went to all the training. I trained with Brian Weiss, father of past life regression, Raymond Moody, father of near-death experiences, and so on. Well, I accumulated this evidence. There are 4 different types: clinical, scientific, religious/spiritual, and what we call empirical, that is, first-hand experience in nature. And there are 9 categories of evidence. I can't discuss them all in these videos, but I'd like to discuss a couple of these. But the meta message is, the end of the story is, life is ever-changing but never-ending. Remember that we as humans can only perceive less than 1% of reality. So to us it seems we're born at a certain time, we live a certain number of years, and then we die, and then we say afterlife or death, or maybe there's nothing. When in fact, life flows seamlessly. In other words, if I were to take off this sweater right now, that wouldn't be the end of me. This is just a shell. This is just something I'm wearing. Well, similarly with our bodies. In India, they call dying dropping the body. In Native Americans call dying changing worlds. So our essence, our spirit, our consciousness, awareness, whatever you want to call it, is 99.999% of who we are. And yet we humans tend to be so focused on the outer package. So it's important to identify ourselves with our biggest part, our timeless, deathless part. So the first category of evidence are near-death experiences. Most people know someone who has nearly died, went through the tunnel, heard beautiful music, saw the light, was told it wasn't their time and time to come back. But what a lot of people don't know is there are literally tens of thousands of documented cases wherein a person was clinically dead, meaning their heart had quit beating, their lungs had quit breathing, their brain had quit working, and they nonetheless were having experiences. They were aware of what was going on in the room they were in, on top of the hospital, around the hospital. So again, these are people in intensive care units, ERs, their eyes are closed, they're clinically dead, and yet their consciousness, their awareness, that 99.999% of who we are, was still alive, was seeing and seeing accurately what was going on. Upon successful resuscitation then, the patient accurately described a car wreck that occurred outside the hospital at the time they were clinically dead. Now they had not seen any family or friends, so there's no way they could know something that happened outside the hospital. They tell the color of the cars, the direction at which car was going. There are so many of these validated cases that they're collectively called tennis shoe stories, because often the person will say, well, if you don't believe that I was really alive while my body was dead, go up to the top of the hospital. There's an old tennis shoe by an air duct, and they'll send a maintenance guy up. It's locked, nobody else can get up there, and in fact, there's an old tennis shoe by the air duct. These people are brought in by an ambulance. I mean, there's no other way. Panels of experts, ophthalmologists, doctors and scientists of all types have been presented with this information, and there's no other conclusion, no other way to describe this phenomena unless indeed there is a consciousness or awareness that is separate from the human body that continues on after death. Now, those experiences are amazing, but especially more so when they occur in blind people, some of whom have been blind from birth. So they can never see. They don't know red from blue, and they don't know what a pen looks like and so on. They've been blind. And yet, these blind people, while they're clinically dead and their eyes closed, describe accurately events that happen in the room, outside the hospital, and so on. It's just amazing. Same way with little children, age 2 years old, who describe later on events that happen accurately. No way they could know this. So we'll have more in part 2 about evidence of afterlife. Yes, there's an afterlife. Yes, you'll see loved ones again. You can learn much more about this from my book and documentary film, Soul Proof.